Have you seen all the really cute embroidered sweaters and t-shirts online? Well, today I'm going to show you how to do it yourself. I have always wanted to learn how to make my own embroidered shirts, and I really didn't know how much I was going to enjoy it myself, but I've really started to enjoy it. So I thought I'd show you how I got this look to be nice and clean. This shirt has actually been laundered, and you can see that my letters are still nice and clean and flat, and I don't have that puckering that happens a lot with embroidery, and that really comes from the types of stabilizers we use to get our project started. So let's take a look at what we need. Here are the things that you'll need to get this project together. You'll need a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, whatever you want to embroider on. I have painter's tape. I would rather use painter's tape and stick it to my shirt and do all my marking instead of actually marking on my project. That way we don't have any lasting marks that we don't want. So I always use painter's tape to do my marking. You'll need your threads for embroidery. We like to use isocord threads, and the colors just depend on what project that you're going to be working on. You'll need your flash drive with the pattern already downloaded. I have some scissors here to snip my threads as we go through the embroidery. And then you'll need your hoop that you'll be hooping your project in. And then we have our stabilizers. So let's take a look at our stabilizers a little closer. Before we get into the specific items we'll need for this project, let's take a quick look at stabilizers and talk about the importance of stabilizers. Every project that you do in embroidery needs a stabilizer in your hoop. And sometimes that's a tearaway because you really want to pull it off of the back of your project. It could be a cutaway, which is like our mesh where we want that to stay in our project. But every time you hoop something for embroidery, you need to have a certain type of stabilizer in that project to get you going. And for our particular project, we're actually going to use 4 different types of stabilizers so we get that nice professional look on our design. So in the hoop itself, I have hooped stick tear tearaway, and we'll take a look at how that works in just a second, but that's what I have in my hoop. I have no show fusible mesh, and it's a cutaway, it's a fusible cutaway mesh on my shirt, and I have actually taken and ironed that to the inside of my sweater already. Here is the inside of my sweatshirt, and this stabilizer is our no-show fusible mesh, and that's a cutaway. And so we use the Baby Lock version because we use Baby Lock machines, but there's different brands out there. You just want the fusible mesh. And I have ironed that about an inch below the collar of my sweater, and then just tried to center it here on the front of my shirt. Notice too that I have not ironed really hard the corners. We'll embroider, and then at the end we'll come back and pull this up and cut it closer to the actual design when we're done. So in our hoop, we have the stick tear tearaway, so it's a tearaway that's sticky. And then on our shirt, we have no show fusible mesh fused to the inside front of our sweatshirt. And then the other 2 that we'll need are hydro melt topping. And this is a dissolve away topper that we'll put on our shirt when we're embroidering, and that keeps the stitches from digging in to the shirt. And then after we're completely done, you may want to add soft stitch. And what that does is it covers up the stitches on the inside of the shirt so that the hard knots on the back don't bother the skin of whoever's wearing the shirt. And I'll show you how to apply that too at the end of this video. So that's the setup that we need. Let's take a look at hooping. All right, so one of the things you'll notice about my project is that even after washing, our letters are nice and flat. There's no puckering between my letters. My threads still look really nice, and that's because I've used stabilizers correctly in my project. And you can see it here on the back of this shirt. And what stabilizers do for us is really support the fabrics that we're using to create projects and keep them looking really professional and flat. If you've ever seen a t-shirt and after it washes it just bunches up, that's because they didn't use their stabilizers properly in their project to begin with. Now we need to get our shirt prepped and attached to our hoop. And so remember, I did show you that I ironed that no-show fusible mesh to the inside of the front of my project. I also folded my shirt in half, and I made sure that my sleeves up here at the top are matching, and then right here under the underarms is matching. And I also pressed a seam here on the top of my sweatshirt so that I knew where the center line was, and I could tell what would be exactly in the middle vertically. So I have that mark here right down the middle, and I'm going to use my painter's tape to mark horizontally across so that I can work on getting my design perfectly centered and so that it's straight across my shirt, and when I'm done it's not like angled. So I just take some painter's tape and I'm going to stick it right here to the front of the shirt. On my sweater, you can see that I have a vertical line here, and I like my designs to be about 3 inches lower than where the bottom of the collar is on the shirt. So I'm gonna measure down about 3 inches, and again, you don't have to be perfect with that, but that's just kind of the general rule, and make a mark on my painter's tape. Okay. And then we're just going to go straight across from there. Okay, so I'm about 2.5, 3 inches down from my collar. I'm keeping one of the lines on my ruler lined up with the crease that I made in my shirt. And so that's why the painter's tape looks a little off, but I'm staying true to the line that I have here, and I'm gonna make me a vertical or a horizontal mark on my painter's tape. That way I know how to get this on my shirt straight, and I haven't made any marks on my shirt, so that keeps my shirt nice and clean, but I have a way to make sure that I'm straight on my project. Okay, so I have hooped the stick tear tearaway, and it has a paper side, and then underneath that it's sticky, and so we need to expose the sticky so that the shirt will stick to the hoop. I've got just a straight pin, and I'm scoring the paper so that it's just enough for me to get my fingers in and pull the paper back. And then this piece is sticky underneath. Now that we have the sticky exposed, we need to stick our sweatshirt to this. And one thing that helps you get this project started is to turn your t-shirt or sweatshirt inside out so that we can stick it to the hoop. Right. And I have the side that has the no-show fusible mesh on it, and that's what we're going to stick here. And we're going to use that vertical line that we have kind of pressed in our shirt, and I'm going to use that to kind of line up with the marks on my hoop so that I can stay mostly vertical. I'm going to use my sewing machine and the laser to position this perfectly, but this kind of gets us generally in the center so the design will fit. Okay, so then I'm going to press down, and then I'm going to fold over. And what we're going to be working on is this piece here. And that's how we keep all the shirt out of the way of the machine, and we can embroider in here and it stays really good. We want to make sure that we don't have any bubbles in the shirt. So I'm just making sure to pull it smooth and get it stuck down to that hoop. Okay, so this, we just have to really watch when we're doing shirt so that we don't get this caught on the arm or under the needle. This is not a project that you walk away from as it's stitching, because you want to make sure that this doesn't fold over under the needle or something crazy. So we have all this bulk. You can also use binder clips and things like that to kind of hold this down and kind of wad it up out of your way to do your stitching. But now our shirt is prepped and ready to go to the machine. We're ready to stick our project in the machine. And one thing I wanted to note on this, oftentimes people try to take all this bulk and go underneath this needle here. And in reality, it's actually easier if you'll sling it over the top of your machine and then come back underneath your needle. So you can drag it in from the back and then attach it over here on the side to the machine. Also, because we have such a large project, you want to make sure that this arm doesn't move. And so I always kind of put my hand on it as I'm pushing my hoop into place so that this arm doesn't move. If the arm moves, then your design is not going to line up like it needs to. And then we can just move all of this bulk out of our way. Okay, and then we're ready to start stitching. So today we're going to stitch out our funny chicken. And before we start stitching, we've got to make sure that our design is lined up where we need it to be. In our Baby Lock Altair, this also works for the Baby Lock Meridian, the Solaris, and the new Radiance. You're going to go to Layout, and down here at the very bottom, we have a button that has the laser, and it's for placement. Then on the next screen, you can choose which part of the design you want to line up with. We're going to use the top middle of our design because that's where I made the placement marks on my shirt. Okay, and then next, it'll let you either go side to side for lining up or top to bottom. And we have that line pressed in our sweatshirt. So I'm going to use this direction to line up so that I can put it on that seam that we have pressed. On my project, you can see that I have a little laser light now that's coming down for the positioning. And that's where the top center of my design is right now, when it should be down here at this point. So on my screen, it's telling me to align that dot with the first place on my shirt. So here it's wanting us to take this top point and put it on our shirt where we want that point to be. So I'm going to use the arrows on my screen and move it down to that point here. Okay, so that's where I want the top middle of my design to be. Here on the screen, now that I have that first point where I want it to be, we're going to hit next. Now it's asking me to find the second point, which would be directly below the first point. This is really helpful if we don't have our shirt hoop perfectly square. Then this allows the design to kind of turn and make it look like it's square when we pull the project off of the hoop. So this is so very important if you've ever done embroidery with placement and getting this to look perfect without all the effort of checking and rotating and going back and forth. So I'm going to choose that second point on my shirt. It's kind of hard to see on my screen, but that dot is on the folded line of the shirt, the one that I pressed into my sweatshirt. And it might be helpful as a beginner to maybe take painter's tape and go all the way down the middle of your shirt so that you can really see that line and make sure that you're getting your dot here centered. If you have a different type of machine, you may want to just use the features that it comes with in terms of how to check your positioning, and line up your design. And sometimes in your manual you can find that information as well. So you just want to make sure that you have your design centered and straight before you start stitching. Now it's ready to go. Our whole goal now is to make sure that all of this bulk of our shirt doesn't get in the way of our needle, and we're going to stitch out our design. After I get done stitching my design, I will show you how to finish off your shirt and get it going. One other thing before we get stitching, we need to make sure and remove the painter's tape, and then we're going to add our Hydro Melt Topper. Hydro Melt Topper keeps the stitches from digging into your project. They almost float on top of the surface, and it is a much more professional look than if you leave it off. So if you've ever tried to embroider on a project and all the stitches pretty much hide in the fabric, it would have helped if you'd had a topper. Okay, we're ready to get stitching. Okay, so to finish up our shirt, all we need to do is peel off as much as we can of this Hydro Melt Topper. Remember that if you don't get everything out, that's okay. It'll wash out when the garment gets washed. And then we did use the stick tear away to hoop our project. And so here on the back, all we have to do is rip it loose from the hoop. So here on the inside of our project, any of this tearaway that you can pull out of your design, you're gonna wanna go back through and do your best at getting some of the paper out. If you can't get all of it out, that's okay. You just don't want those leftover pieces snagging in some of it. So we'll go in and clean up all of that. And then here with this fusible no-show mesh, remember we didn't iron it down hard on the corners so that you can actually pull it back towards your design. And then we're going to trim with a pair of scissors around the design and get this excess no-show mesh out of the inside of our shirt. When you go to trim out the no-show mesh, make sure that you do not catch your actual shirt. So we're going to trim close, but you don't want to make a hole in the project that you just completed. So then that's the inside of our shirt, and we have that no-show mesh trimmed back pretty close to the design. And you can see here with all the thread tie-offs on the inside of the shirt, it would be very itchy against your skin. And you can certainly leave it there and trim this back as well as you can. But they make a product called Soft Stitch, which we saw earlier. And this is kind of a silky material. And you can lay it over your design. May fit better this way on mine. And actually iron that down on top of it, and it covers up all of that stitching and makes it smooth against your skin. So that soft stitch really is a nice added bonus on the inside of your shirt. So I'm going to take my shirt over to the iron and iron this flat, and then put my soft stitch on top of it. I have my soft stitch ironed to the back of the design, and I'm just going to take and just trim it around where it's not fused so that it's not hanging loose. Again, we're being very careful that we don't cut our shirt. Just like that, we have a fun embroidered shirt with our own unique design. I love being able to create something unique and individual on the garments that I have. I've really enjoyed learning how to embroider on t-shirts and on sweatshirts, and I really hope that you learned something new today too.
If you liked what you saw today, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to receive those notifications, make sure you click on the bell icon. Thanks for letting us turn your inspiration into creation.